They found his teeth before they found his name. Scattered like busted marbles across the cracked pavement on 145th Street. A silver Cadillac, engine still humming, door wide open, its driver gone. Blood slicked the sidewalk like a red carpet into hell. No witnesses. No screams. Just the hum of a flickering streetlight and the whisper of Harlem's summer wind. The first to arrive wasn't a cop, but a kid chasing a basketball. He froze mid-dribble. That's when the sirens began to scream. Detective Reuben Wallace stood over the crime scene, jaw clenched. No prints, no casing, no body. This is a goddamn message. And it was signed in blood. The victim, never officially named, was a mid-level heroin runner for the Delaney crew. But word on the street said it was Rafael, the devil of Lenox. If he's back, Wallace muttered, we're already dead. Harlem had known violence. But this was surgical. A reintroduction. Not just a murder. A resurrection. Before the chaos, Rafael Trujillo wasn't a name. He was a whisper in Harlem barbershops, a cautionary tale told between cuts and fade. That boy with no daddy, that's Rafael, old heads would say. He'd roam the streets in scuffed Jordans, eyes too sharp for his age. His mother, Maria, worked 2 shifts at St. Luke's, barely surviving. Rafael's world was the alley behind the bodegas and the rooftop corners where guns were passed like cigarettes. He wasn't born evil. He was carved by the silence of the system. By 12, he was running errands for the Delaney crew. But by 14, he'd watched a man bleed out on the A-train tracks. That's when something inside him snapped. You see enough blood, Rafael once told a cellmate, you either run or drink it. He didn't run. He swallowed it whole. The Delaney crew didn't recruit, they absorbed. Kids like Rafael were ripe. Quiet, angry, invisible. Delaney's lieutenant, Big Virgil, spotted him scrapping with 2 older teens behind St. Paul's. He didn't stop the fight. He watched. When Rafael walked away, bloodied but still upright, Virgil offered him a ride. You hungry? He asked. Rafael didn't speak. But he got in the car. That ride changed everything. They took him to the Bronx warehouse where the real business was done. Cocaine packed like bakery flour. Men with guns. Silent nods. Rafael saw the future. You want to be rich? Virgil said. Then don't blink. Rafael didn't. That night, they gave him a burner phone and a list of numbers. And Harlem began to bleed. Harlem changed fast when Rafael started moving weight. Corners shifted. Crews disappeared. Mlimed. His method was different, clean, brutal, efficient. No flashy cars. No jewelry. Just results. The elders noticed. And feared. That boy don't smile, one dealer whispered. He don't blink. He became a ghost with a gun. A myth wrapped in steel. By 16, he ran uptown's flow like a cold-blooded CFO. But he never flashed it. He never partied. His eyes stayed on the horizon, always scanning for betrayal. When his best friend Javier took a shortcut, Rafael found him in a tenement stairwell. You lied to me, he said. Javier cried. Rafael pulled the trigger. No yelling. No mess. Just silence. That's when Harlem truly began to fear him. The night Javier died, Harlem felt a tremor. Not the kind that shakes buildings, but the kind that shifts balance. Word spread like rot. Rafael wasn't just another street soldier. He was his own kingdom. I'm famed. The Delaney crew. He made them irrelevant. His rules were clear. Loyalty or silence. No in between. He started dressing cleaner, speaking less, moving like a chess player mid-game. Those who tried to test him vanished, some found floating in the Harlem River. Others were never found at all. Detective Wallace heard the whispers. Trujillo's different, the snitches said. He don't play. Wallace knew then, this wasn't just another war. This was an evolution. A new order was rising, and it bled in silence. Maria Trujillo never saw her son becoming a storm. In her mind he was still the boy who slept clutching his comic books and whispered prayers before bed. She worked the night shift in the ER, healing wounds while her son learned to cause them. On the rare Sunday mornings they met, Maria cooked rice and eggs in silence. "You're too quiet," she'd say, forcing a smile. Rafael never answered. He loved her, but the streets had hollowed something inside. He kissed her cheek gently, left an envelope of cash on the fridge, and disappeared before the kettle boiled. Maria knew. She always knew. But she chose to look away, fearing what she'd see if she truly looked. "God forgive him," she whispered into her rosary beads. "Because this world won't." The first time Rafael held a dying man, he didn't flinch. It was supposed to be a simple deal. But the buyer was wired, and the cops stormed the alley like wolves. Shots fired. Screams. When the dust settled, Juno, a kid Rafael had vouched for, was bleeding out against a dumpster. "Don't let me die," Juno gasped, his breath wet with blood. Rafael knelt, calm as a surgeon. "I told you not to talk so much," he said. There was no rage, no sadness, just observation. Juno died before backup arrived. Rafael wiped his hands on his hoodie and walked away. That night, he slept like nothing had changed. Because nothing had. This world demanded numbness. And Rafael had perfected the art. Reuben Wallace didn't smoke anymore. He chewed toothpicks, habit picked up during his third round of therapy. Harlem was changing, and Rafael Trujillo was the name on every lip, always whispered. "Ghost with a heartbeat," some said. "Doesn't blink," others warned. Wallace sat in his squad car outside 112, watching kids run. Somewhere in that blur, he thought, was the next Rafael. "We don't stop him," Wallace said to his partner, "we'll be pulling bodies out of basements for the next 10 years. But Trujillo was too clean. No photos. No calls. Just rumors and corpses. Every snitch who tried to talk vanished. "He's untouchable," the DA muttered. Wallace disagreed. "No one's untouchable, not even the devil." To Harlem's youth, Rafael wasn't a villain. He was a legend. The boys who once fought over sneakers now mimicked his walk, his silence, his stare. They wore their hoodies tighter, kept their words short. "Be like Trujillo," they'd joke. But deep down they weren't joking. Rafael represented power in a world that denied them everything. School counselors called it a crisis. Preachers called it a plague. But no one had an answer. In the corner barbershops, men argued if Rafael was a savior or a curse. "He feeds families," said one. "He buries them too," said another. And outside, a boy no older than 15 leaned against a lamppost, hand resting casually on a pistol under his hoodie, just like Rafael. There was one photo of Rafael that survived, barely. Grainy, out of focus, taken by a drunk dealer trying to flex online. The man's body was found the next day, his phone smashed, his fingers broken. But the image leaked. Rafael in the background, leaning against a black Mercedes, eyes like obsidian, hoodie draped like a cloak. That photo spread like wildfire in back channels. Not because of what it showed, but what it proved. He was real. Flesh and blood. Not just a myth. And for law enforcement, that changed everything. The FBI opened a case. Harlem tightened its grip. Mothers locked windows earlier. Fathers cleaned shotguns. Because Rafael Trujillo wasn't a story anymore. He was coming. It started with fire. 3 buildings on 142nd went up in smoke overnight. Arson, they said. But Harlem knew better. Those buildings belonged to the Kaskis, a Ukrainian crew trying to edge into Trujillo's territory. They were warned. They didn't listen. And now, smoke clouded the skyline like war fog. Witnesses saw nothing. Cameras caught nothing. But every wall in Harlem knew whose hands lit the match. Rafael didn't leave threats. He left examples. Inside the rubble, firefighters pulled out charred money, sealed in melted plastic. No bodies. Just silence. Detective Wallace stood across the street, fists in his coat pockets. "He's not running a gang," Wallace said quietly. "He's running a war." And Harlem was the battlefield. The Caskies retaliated fast and sloppy. A drive-by on 135th. Wrong corner. Wrong target. They sprayed bullets into a bodega at 5:47 p.m. A mother and her child died with juice boxes in their hands. That night, Harlem screamed. Not for revenge. For Rafael. And he answered. The next morning, 5 members of the Caskie crew were found inside a delivery truck parked behind a meat market, silent, cold, stacked like crates. Each shot clean. Each throat slit after death. No prints. No sign of struggle. Just a paper taped to the windshield with one word. Enough. It wasn't justice. It was declaration. Rafael wasn't chasing peace. He was rewriting law. And the streets listened. Inside Harlem's underground, fear turned to loyalty. Crews that once opposed Rafael now begged for his flag. "Give me a block," they said. "Give me a job." He didn't shout. He didn't boast. He walked into meetings like a shadow. Quiet. Taut. Watching. Deciding. And when he spoke, they listened. "No kids, no mess, no noise," Rafael said. "Or I bury your name." He built a network, cleaner than any cartel. Phones changed weekly. Money moved only through laundromats and dead drops. Even the feds admitted, he's too smooth. Too disciplined. He wasn't just Harlem's ghost anymore. He was its architect. And the city was being redesigned in silence and blood. Wallace got a call from a contact in Jersey. "You've got a rat in your office," the voice said. "And he's feeding Trujillo." The line went dead. 2 weeks later, Officer Daniels, Wallace's own partner, went missing. His cruiser was found abandoned near the Hudson. Inside, a folder of evidence linked to Rafael's laundering routes. But no Daniels. Just his badge, melted and warped from acid, sitting on the dashboard. The betrayal hit deep. Wallace had mentored Daniels. Trained him. Trusted him. "He played me," Wallace muttered, staring at the badge like it might apologize. Harlem didn't just belong to Rafael now. The system did too. And Wallace knew. This wasn't law enforcement anymore. It was survival. They started calling him King Silence. Not in mockery. In reverence. He didn't make scenes. He made history. Harlem's crime rate dropped in some corners because no one dared act without his nod. Even rival crews adopted his rules. A single text from an unknown number could shut down a block. Detectives feared wiretaps. Prosecutors dropped cases before they began. "How do you prosecute a ghost?" the mayor asked at a closed-door briefing. "You don't," Wallace said. "You summon an exorcist." But Rafael wasn't hiding. He was evolving. Above a pawn shop on Lenox, he opened a music studio. Kids lined up with mixtapes. Cameras flashed. Smiles cracked. But they didn't know. It wasn't music being recorded. It was war plans. Whispered between beats. She came back in winter. Camila Rivera. 2. Once Rafael's heartbeat, now just a ghost in his memories. She'd left Harlem years ago after her brother overdosed on Trujillo's product, cut by mistake, or maybe not. But now she returned, sharper, colder, different. She claimed she wanted peace. To help kids get out. "They don't have to die here," she said. Rafael met her in a church basement, just the two of them, no soldiers. "I thought you were gone for good," he said. Camila replied, "I thought you were better than this." Their eyes locked, wounds unspoken. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, silence screamed louder than words. Neither trusted the other, but something deeper kept them seated, regret, or something worse, unfinished love. Camila had a secret. One she wore like perfume, undetectable, but always present. She wasn't just back for peace. She was wired. Recruited by the Bureau 6 months ago. A plea deal for her mother's immigration case. At first, she said no. Then she saw the photos, the bodies, the kids, the overdoses. She agreed. Now she was the wiretap. Every hug was a data drop. Every glance, a report. She cried the first time she recorded his voice. It doesn't feel like betrayal, she told her handler. It feels like burial. But the Bureau didn't care. He's a virus, they said. You're the cure. Camila's heart broke a little more each day. Because she knew when it was over, there'd be nothing left of either of them. Rafael started changing. He smiled more. Loosened his grip. Let his lieutenants take meetings. You trust too easy, Rico warned him, his most loyal soldier. But Rafael ignored the static. Camila had done what no bullet could, made him human again. They'd walk Harlem's quieter blocks at night, talking about what-ifs. What if I opened a bookstore, he joked. Camila laughed too hard. Rafael grinned. I missed your laugh. But under that grin, the chessboard kept moving. Harlem didn't sleep. And neither did betrayal. Rico began investigating on his own. She's too clean, he told Rafael. She left and came back like a saint. But Rafael didn't listen. Love was louder. And for the first time, he was deaf to danger. The truth cracked open during a heat wave. Rico intercepted a signal, a scrambled transmission bouncing from Camila's burner. He traced it to a black van parked near the studio. Inside, listening gear, encrypted laptops, bureau insignia. Rico lost his mind. He kicked in the studio door, gun raised. You brought her into this, he shouted. Rafael stared at the wall, silent. Camila stood frozen. Say it, Rico barked. She's a rat. But Rafael didn't answer. Instead, he reached into a drawer, pulled out the same photo from the meat truck. Enough, and placed it on the table. Everyone talks, he said quietly. But some whispers cut deeper. Rico stormed out. Camila's eyes filled with tears. Rafael's never did. That night, Rafael walked alone to the Harlem River. No guards. No calls. Just a man with ghosts on his back. He stared into the black water like it might forgive him. Camila followed, watching from behind a tree. She didn't speak. Couldn't. She just listened. I know, Rafael said aloud, not turning. I've always known. Silence. A pause. Then, you're the only one who saw me before the blood. He dropped something into the river, a small recorder. The one Camila gave him on their first date, back when it played music. Now it carried everything else. He never turned to look at her. He just walked into the dark. And for the first time, Harlem felt empty. Camila disappeared. One day, she was in Harlem. The next, gone. No calls. No texts. The Bureau pulled her early, said the heat was too high. But Rafael knew better. She was either protected or silenced. And that silence cut deeper than any bullet. Rico stood beside him in the safe house, laying out floor plans. Feds are planning a sweep, he said. You've got one option, burn everything. Rafael nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else. Burn what? He muttered. There's nothing left to save. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder marked with his own name, photos, maps, lists. They want a ghost, Rafael whispered. Let's give them a fire. And that night, the city braced for the storm. At 3:06 a.m., Harlem exploded. Not with bombs, but betrayal. Rafael's lieutenants turned. Bought off, blackmailed, broken. One by one, they vanished. Some in cuffs. Some in body bags. Rico was ambushed outside a corner store, 2 bullets to the neck. He died clutching his chain. Rafael watched it unfold from a rooftop above Lennox. He didn't blink. It was always going to end like this, he murmured. Sirens screamed in the distance. Helicopters whirred like vultures above. Harlem wasn't a kingdom anymore. It was a burning church, collapsing in on itself. And Rafael, he wasn't escaping. He was preparing. Because fire wasn't the end. It was the invitation. The FBI stormed the warehouse at dawn. 12 agents, armored trucks, choppers overhead. But they found nothing. Just empty crates, extinguished fires, and a single note taped to the wall. Too slow. Wallace stared at it, jaw clenched. He's taunting us, one agent spat. No, Wallace said. He's closing the book. Across the city, old allies received texts. Burn phones, burn homes, burn ties. One by one, Rafael erased his presence. No more cash houses. No more foot soldiers. Just ashes. It wasn't surrender. It was purification. He knew the storm was here. And instead of hiding, he was becoming the eye. Calm. Or one. Focused. Devastating. They found Rafael at his mother's grave. Alone. No guards. No weapon. Just a bouquet of lilies in his hand. Wallace approached slowly, weapon drawn. End of the line, he said. Rafael didn't turn. She prayed for me, he said. But God never answered. Wallace stepped closer. You think this is redemption? Rafael smiled faintly. No, just goodbye. A moment passed. Then gunshots in the distance. Distraction? Or accident? Wallace flinched. In that second, Rafael dropped the lilies and vanished into the cemetery fog. Gone. Again. Left only the silence of stone angels and fading sirens. Wallace cursed under his breath. The devil had slipped past the gates one more time. The funeral was private. 5 men in suits. No priest. No eulogy. Just a closed casket and a grave dug deep. But it wasn't Rafael inside. It was Rico's body, burned, disguised. Trujillo had staged his own burial. Days later, across the Mexican border, a man with his face bandaged and his voice lower crossed into Tamaulipas. Name? The guard asked. Emilio Vega, he said. No blink. No tremble. Just forward motion. He walked into the sun like a myth reborn. Back in Harlem, Wallace stared at the surveillance tape. He's gone, the tech said. Wallace shook his head. No, he's waiting. And somewhere beyond the border, Rafael Trujillo opened his eyes and smiled. 6 months passed. Harlem breathed again, but slower, more cautious. The crime rate dropped, but the fear lingered. Kids still crossed the street when they saw a black Mercedes idle too long. Wallace sat alone at his desk, going over the case file for the 100th time. Pages with no ending. We don't bury men like Trujillo, he said quietly. We archive them. The bureau closed the file. Publicly, Rafael was declared dead. Privately, whispers continued, sightings in Argentina, in Cuba, even Queens. But no confirmation. No leads. Just silence. Wallace lit a cigarette he wasn't supposed to smoke and stared out the window. Ghosts don't die, he muttered. They just wait for a quieter city. Camila lived somewhere near the water now. Changed her name. Changed her voice. But she couldn't change the nightmares. She'd wake up choking on guilt, remembering Rafael's last words at the river. You're the only one who saw me before the blood. She replayed them like a record too scratched to stop. The bureau gave her a check, a new life, and a prescription for silence. But no pill could erase what she felt. Every time she heard footsteps behind her, she wondered, was it him? Was he angry? Forgiving? Or worse, watching? Because in her heart, she knew Trujillo had disappeared, but not from her. He was stitched into her soul. A scar shaped like a name she could never say again. In Tamaulipas, Mexico, a man named Emilio Vega, opened a quiet bar near the coast. No music, no photos, just whiskey and silence. He kept to himself, paid in cash. But once a week, he closed early and walked alone to the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. Locals said he lost someone. Some guessed cartel. Others said exile. No one asked questions twice. One night, a boy with a scar asked, "You ever kill a man?" Emilio looked up, eyes dark and steady. "I buried ghosts," he said. "That count?" The boy nodded slowly and walked away. Emilio stared back at the sea. No badge. No kingdom. Just the weight of what he'd survived. And what he'd lost. Harlem moved on, but not without scars. The barber shops told stories. Kids swapped myths. He ran the whole city without saying a word. They'd whisper. Murals appeared, Rafael in grayscale, haloed by smoke, eyes cold. Some tagged King Silence. Others just wrote, "Still watching." Wallace saw one on the side of a liquor store and shook his head. "You worship ghosts," he muttered. But part of him understood. Raphael wasn't just a man. He was a caution sign etched in blood. A lesson about power, loss, and silence. And like all legends, his truth faded. Rewritten in spray paint and fear. But one thing remained unchanged. No one dared say his name out loud after dark. On a rainy night in Colombia, a DA agent turned up dead. 2 shots to the heart, 1 to the throat. Clean. Surgical. No prints. No witnesses. But in his jacket pocket a single item. A Harlem Metro card. Expired. No reason to be there. Just a whisper in plastic. Wallace heard about it the next morning. He didn't say a word. Just walked outside, lit another cigarette, and looked at the skyline. Somewhere Rafael Trujillo was alive. Not because he escaped, but because legends don't end with gunfire. They echo. And as long as someone feared him, remembered him, or whispered his name, he was still in control. Still watching. Still reigning from the shadows. Years later, the name Rafael Trujillo lived in whispers. The city had changed. Glass towers climbed where brownstones once leaned. But in the shadows, his legend lingered. A kid in a Bronx school wrote a poem titled King Silence and won a state award. Another, caught with a pistol, told police Trujillo handled worse. The myths morphed, sometimes noble, sometimes monstrous. Wallace, now retired, taught criminology at a local college. He ended every lecture the same way: power without soul becomes silence with teeth. No slideshows. No photos. Just those words. And every student leaned in, because deep down they all knew. Raphael wasn't a figure from the past. He was the echo of a question still unanswered. What if the devil you feared was made by the silence you ignored? Somewhere in Medellin, a boy stood outside a run-down cantina, nervous fingers in his pocket. Inside, a man with a faded scar and slow, deliberate movements poured 2 drinks. The boy stepped in. "They say you used to run Harlem," he said. The man didn't answer. He slid the drink across the table. "They also say you died." A long pause. The man looked up, eyes older than the sky outside. "They say a lot." The boy leaned forward. "I want to learn." The man stared at him, hard. "Then first," he said, "learn silence." The boy sat. No more words. Just the hum of a ceiling fan and the sound of ice melting slowly into something stronger. The torch didn't need to be passed. It had already been lit. Back in Harlem, a mural faded. Rain washed the colors. Developers eyed the block. The city moved forward, but not cleanly. One night, a candle appeared at the mural's base. Then another. Within days, it was a shrine. No name. No plaque. Just offerings, notes, photos, worn-out sneakers, cassette tapes. Harlem hadn't forgotten. Not really. Because Trujillo wasn't a hero or a villain. He was the street's mirror. Raw. Flawed. Real. Real. The city didn't love him. It remembered him. And in that memory, it held its breath. Because the legend was never about who he was, but what he forced the world to see. The cracks in its own armor. The silence between its own screams. One recording remained. Discovered years later, in an evidence locker mislabeled as damaged. It wasn't. It was clear. Rafael's voice, calm and direct. I didn't start this to be a king, he said. I became one because no one else would bleed for the forgotten. He paused. But kings rot too, and some thrones are built on coffins. The agent who heard it played it again and again, then burned it. Not out of duty, but out of fear. Because truth that sharp doesn't just cut, it infects. The file never made it to the archives. Only the silence did. A silence that weighed more than any trial, any bullet, any grave. A silence that still spoke. A boy stood in front of the mural one morning, his backpack slung low, sneakers scuffed. He didn't know the full story. Just pieces. Rumors died. But he felt something there. He touched the wall lightly. That's where he died, he whispered to no one. And maybe that was true. Or maybe not. Legends rarely offer clean endings. They linger, changing with every voice that repeats them. Behind the boy, a bus hissed to a stop. He turned, stepped in, and disappeared into the city's rhythm. The wall remained. Faded. Silent. Like nowhere. And somewhere far away, a man sipped bitter coffee and stared out a window. He heard nothing. But he smiled anyway.